I sold my apartment. I took out loans. I worked 16 hours a day for 2 years. I spent $120,000 saving my mother from cancer. Or at least, that's what I thought. Because while I was almost having a nervous breakdown trying to pay for the chemotherapies, she was tanned in the Maldives drinking French champagne with her boyfriend. She never had cancer. She wasn't even sick. Every test, every prescription, every photo crying in the chemo room, all lies. And the worst part? When I confronted her, you know what my mother said? You should thank me for finally learning not to be so naive. But she didn't count on me finding out everything. And when I did, I guarantee she wished she had actually had cancer. My name is Helena. I'm 38 years old, and I've always been the perfect daughter. My mother, Marcia, raised me alone after my father left us when I was 10 years old. She always reminded me of this. I sacrificed my entire life for you, Helena. I could have remarried, traveled the world, but I stayed here raising you. For years, I carried that guilt like a chain. So when I built my career, bought my apartment, and was finally financially stable, I felt it was my turn to give back. My mother was 62 years old and worked as a secretary. Nothing extraordinary, but enough to live comfortably. 2 years ago, she met Ricardo at a work event. A divorced real estate agent, charming, always well-dressed. I thought it was strange at first. He seemed more interested in her standard of living than in her, but my mother was radiant, so I swallowed my suspicions. 3 months after the relationship started, I got the call that changed everything. She was crying so hard she could barely speak. Helena, I need to tell you something. I have cancer. Advanced stage breast cancer. The doctor said I need to start treatment immediately. My world collapsed. I dropped everything and ran to her apartment. I found my mother on the sofa, pale, holding an envelope with test results. Ricardo was beside her with one hand on her shoulder, looking at me with that calculated pity expression that should have alerted me. How much does the treatment cost? I asked first. $80,000 initially, Ricardo answered for her. Her health insurance doesn't cover experimental treatments, but they're the most effective. I didn't think twice. The next day, I put my apartment up for sale. It was everything I'd built in 10 years of hard work, but it was my mother. A few weeks later, I transferred $60,000 to her account. Another $20,000 came from loans I took out using my car as collateral. I'm going to start chemotherapy next week, she told me with tears in her eyes. I don't know how to thank you, daughter. You're saving me. The following months were hell. I moved to a tiny apartment and took a second job as a freelance consultant. I slept 4 hours a night. Breakfast was black coffee and anxiety. But every time my body begged for rest, I thought of my mother fighting cancer and found strength. She sent photos of the treatment, always from behind or at strange angles in the chemo rooms. She wore colorful scarves on her head. I lost all my hair, she said. She looked thinner in video calls, always with dim lighting. You don't need to come visit me, she insisted. The doctor said I need to avoid contact because of low immunity. Even Ricardo is sleeping in the guest room. Something in my stomach churned with these excuses, but I drowned the intuition with logic. She was protecting her health. It was responsible. It made sense. 6 months later, she asked for more money. The treatment isn't working as expected. I need a $40,000 surgery. $40,000? I didn't have that much. I took out loans with absurd interest rates. I sold my car. My sister, who lives in another state, contributed $5,000. Every cent that came in went straight to my mother's account.
A year passed. I was on the verge of collapse. I lost 18 pounds. I had anxiety attacks every week. My boss called me in for a serious conversation about my performance. But whenever I complained, my mother sobbed, "Sorry for being a burden. Maybe it's better if I give up treatment." and I went back to working 16 hours a day. It was on a rainy Tuesday that everything crumbled. I was in the supermarket checkout line when I saw it. A cheap celebrity gossip magazine, those near the register. On the page of Readers Who Met Celebrities on Trips, there was a small but unmistakable photo. My mother, tanned, radiant, in a bikini on a paradisical beach next to Ricardo, both with champagne glasses. The caption, "Couple enjoying the Maldives, photo sent by @TravelLover2023, taken in January." January. 2 months ago, when she was supposedly having emergency surgery. My hands were shaking so much, I dropped the shopping basket. People were looking at me, but I couldn't move. I bought the magazine and went to the car. I called my mother. "Hello?" Her voice, cheerful, without that forced weakness. "Where are you?" I asked, my voice coming out strange. Silence. Then, "At home, daughter. Why? Are you sure you're not on some tropical beach drinking champagne?" The silence that followed said everything. "Helena, I can explain." I hung up. My hands were sweating. My heart was beating so hard I felt it in my throat. I went straight to her apartment. I used the key I had for emergencies. She wasn't there, but the apartment told stories. Open suitcases with summer clothes, Polaroid photos scattered on the table. Greece, Italy, Dubai, Bali. Always her and Ricardo, always smiling, always in expensive places. In the closet, no chemotherapy medication, just expensive creams and French perfumes. In a drawer, I found the envelope, that one with the test results. I opened it with trembling hands. It was a real exam, but from 3 years ago. And the result? Negative for any type of cancer. She had taken an old and innocent exam and built an entire lie on top of it. I sat on the floor and cried, not from sadness, from pure, visceral anger, the kind that burns inside. 2 hours later, she arrived, tanned, with that glow of someone who just came back from vacation. When she saw me sitting on her couch with all the photos spread out on the coffee table, her face lost its color. "Helena, $120,000, I said, my voice frighteningly calm. 2 years of my life. I almost lost my job. I had to go to a psychiatrist for panic attacks. And you were sunbathing in the Maldives?" "Let me explain." "Explain," I screamed, and she took a step back. "Explain how you faked having cancer, how you sent me fake photos, how you made me believe you were dying." Ricardo appeared at the door with shopping bags from luxury brands. When he saw the scene, he tried to leave discreetly. "You're not going anywhere either," I said, and something in my voice made him freeze. "It was his idea," my mother started, pointing to Ricardo. "No," Ricardo retorted. "It was her idea. You're both pathetic. But you didn't count on one thing." I picked up my phone and showed the screen. I had been recording the conversation since I arrived. Every word, every implicit admission. "I'm going to give you 2 options, Mom. First, I take this recording, all the receipts from the transfers, the photos of your trips, and go straight to the police. Fraud is a federal crime. You and your little boyfriend will spend years in jail." She turned pale. Ricardo looked like he was going to throw up. Second option, you return every cent. Sell her apartment if necessary, pay in installments if needed, but I want every last dollar back. And you're going to sign a full confession acknowledging the fraud. My mother tried to negotiate, cry, manipulate. But I was no longer that naive and guilty daughter. I was a woman who had been robbed and betrayed in the worst possible way. In the end, they agreed. They sold her apartment. Ricardo sold the luxury car he had bought with my money. In 8 months, I received the $120,000 back with interest that I imposed. But the real revenge came when I discovered that my mother had done this before, not with cancer, but with other stories. An aunt contacted me after I discreetly spread the truth in the family. She had lost $15,000 years ago in an invented surgical emergency. We gathered evidence and went to the police. My mother and Ricardo were charged with multiple frauds. She got 2 years in prison and 5 years probation, Ricardo 3 years. Today, 3 years later, I rebuilt my life. I bought a new apartment, smaller but honest. I go to therapy and learn to trust again, little by little. My mother sent me letters from prison. I threw them all in the trash without opening them, because I learned something crucial. Unconditional love doesn't mean accepting unconditional abuse, and family isn't who shares your blood, but who would never make your heart bleed. She said I should thank her for learning not to be naive. So thank you, Mom. The lesson cost $120,000, but it was worth every cent.